I was walking home from the library, headphones in, completely oblivious to my surroundings. A mistake I'd realized too late. One moment I was on a quiet Brooklyn street at 9 p.m. The next, a black van screeched to a halt beside me, the side door flew open, and strong hands grabbed me. I tried to scream, but a hand clamped over my mouth. I fought, kicking, thrashing, trying to use every self-defense move I'd learned in the single class I'd taken 3 years ago. It was useless. There were 3 of them, all significantly larger than my 5'4" frame, all clearly experienced in subduing people. They hauled me into the van, tied my wrists, and threw a hood over my head. The whole thing took maybe 30 seconds. Efficient, practiced, terrifying. Got her. One of them said in a gravelly voice. Let's move. The van peeled away from the curb, and I felt the world tilt as we took corners too fast. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. This was it. I was being kidnapped. Probably going to be killed. Or worse. Please. I managed to say through the hood, my voice shaking. Please, I don't have any money. My family doesn't have money. Whatever you want. I can't. Shut up. One of them said. Not aggressively, almost bored. Like kidnapping women was so routine it wasn't worth getting emotional about. The drive lasted maybe 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. When the van finally stopped and they pulled me out, I could hear city sounds, traffic, distant voices. The kind of ambient noise that meant we were still in New York. That was something, at least. Not that it helped. They marched me into a building. I counted 17 steps up, then a door opening, then the smell of expensive cologne and cigar smoke. Rich people smells. That was either very good or very bad. When they finally removed the hood, I found myself in what looked like an expensive office. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows showing a view of the Manhattan skyline, and sitting behind an enormous desk was a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a Mafia movie. He was probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that assessed me with cold calculation. He wore an expensive suit, had the kind of build that suggested he could hurt you very badly if he wanted to, and carried himself with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Remove the restraints, he said to his men. His voice was deep, slightly accented. Italian, I thought. They cut the zip ties, and I immediately rubbed my wrists where they'd bitten into my skin. My hands were shaking. Actually, all of me was shaking. Sit. The man said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I'd rather stand? That wasn't a request. I sat. Survival instinct told me that defying him right now was a bad idea. He studied me for a long moment, his expression shifting from cold assessment to something like confusion. Then annoyance. Then he said something in rapid Italian to his men. One of them responded, and suddenly all of them were looking at me with matching expressions of, "We screwed up." "What's your name?" The man behind the desk asked. "Why does that matter if you're going to kill me anyway?" "I'm not going to kill you." "Your name?" "Olivia. Olivia Chen. Olivia Chen." He said it slowly, like he was testing how it sounded. Then he swore. Colorfully, in Italian. I didn't understand all the words, but the tone was unmistakable. "You have a twin sister." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes. Sophie, how did you?" Because we were supposed to grab Sophie Chen, not Olivia Chen. Which means my men are idiots who grabbed the wrong twin. He glared at the 3 men who'd kidnapped me. "How did you not verify you had the right girl?" "Boss, they're identical," one of them said defensively. "Same face, same height, same hair. We confirmed the target was at that location. Except the target wasn't there, her sister was. And now we have the wrong woman." He turned his attention back to me. "Where is your sister?" "I don't know." "Why do you want her? What did Sophie do?" "That's not your concern. Where is she?" I said I don't know. We don't exactly keep tabs on each other's schedules. We're adults with separate lives. "When did you last see her?" 3 days ago. We had coffee. She seemed fine. Normal. Whatever you think she did, you're probably wrong. Sophie's an accountant. She's boring and rule-following and definitely not the kind of person who'd be involved in anything that would make I gestured vaguely at him and his men. "Whatever you people are. Want to kidnap her." "Whatever we are," he repeated, something like amusement flickering across his face. "That's diplomatic. I'm Dante Caruso. And your sister has something that belongs to me. I want it back." "What does she have?" "Information. Files. Evidence of transactions she shouldn't have been able to access. She stole it, and now she's trying to use it as leverage. I don't take kindly to blackmail. Sophie wouldn't do that. She's not. She doesn't steal things or blackmail people. You have the wrong person. Not just the wrong twin, but the wrong family entirely. I don't have the wrong person. I have documentation proving your sister accessed secured files from her employer's system and downloaded confidential information. Her employer being a shell company my organization uses for certain financial operations. She knew exactly what she was doing. My stomach dropped. Sophie worked for Prometheus Financial, a firm that handled accounts for various clients. She'd complained recently about some irregularities she'd noticed. Accounts that didn't make sense, transactions that seemed suspicious. But I'd assumed she was just being paranoid, seeing conspiracies where there were only mistakes. If she took something, it was probably because she thought it was illegal. Sophie's annoyingly ethical. She'd report financial crimes, not commit them. Then she's naive and stupid. In my world, discovering illegal activity and reporting it gets you killed. Taking the information and trying to trade it for money, that's just slower suicide with extra steps. Is that what she did? Tried to blackmail you? Through intermediaries. Smart enough not to contact me directly. Stupid enough to think I wouldn't figure out who she was. He leaned back in his chair. Now I have you instead of her. Which presents an interesting problem. I can't just let you go. You've seen my face, know my name, know you were kidnapped. But killing you seems excessive when you're not actually the person who wronged me. How considerate of you to hesitate before murdering an innocent person. Sarcasm. Interesting defense mechanism. He pulled out his phone, typed something. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your sister. Tell her you've been taken. Tell her if she wants to see you alive again, she'll return what she stole and present herself here within 24 hours. Simple exchange. You for her and the information. And if she doesn't, then we'll revisit the question of whether killing you is excessive or just pragmatic. He slid his phone across the desk. Call her. Now. My hands were still shaking as I picked up the phone. Sophie's number was in my contacts. We'd been close growing up, even if we'd drifted somewhat as adults. She answered on the third ring. Liv. Whose phone is this? Why are you calling from a strange number? Sophie, I need you to listen carefully and not freak out. I've been kidnapped by people who say you stole something from them. They want it back, and they want you to come. No. Sophie's voice was sharp, panicked. Liv, don't tell them anything. Don't. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? I'm fine so far. But Sophie, they're serious. They want you and whatever you took within 24 hours or... I'm not giving them anything. Liv, you need to escape. Find a way out. I can't. I won't trade with them. What I have is too important. It's evidence of human trafficking, money laundering, dozens of crimes. I can't let them bury it just to save. Danny took the phone from my hand, ending the call. His expression was dark, dangerous. Your sister just condemned you to death. I hope you appreciate her principles. She's trying to expose criminals. That's not condemning me. That's choosing to do the right thing even when it's hard. The right thing. He laughed. But there was no humor in it. Your sister is naive if she thinks exposing my organization will accomplish anything beyond getting both of you killed. I have lawyers, judges, politicians in my pocket. Her evidence will disappear. She'll disappear. And now you'll disappear too. All of it meaningless. Then why do you care if she has it? If you're so powerful and untouchable, why does it matter? Because I don't leave loose ends. Because even small leaks can become floods if not contained. And because I will not be blackmailed by some self-righteous accountant who thinks she's a hero. He stood, moved around the desk. I shrank back in my chair instinctively, and he noticed. Relax. I told you, I'm not going to kill you, yet, but your sister has put me in a difficult position. I can't let you go. Can't use you for leverage if she won't trade. That leaves limited options. What options? I could hold you indefinitely. Keep you locked up until your sister comes to her senses. Or I decide you're not worth the trouble. But that's resource intensive and boring. Sorry to inconvenience you with my kidnapping. Or, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. I could make you useful. Put you to work earning your continued existence. I have various operations that could use additional staff. Most of them unpleasant, but you'd be alive. You want me to work for you? The man who kidnapped me. I want you to be worth more alive than dead. Right now, the math isn't in your favor. Make yourself useful, and maybe I'll decide keeping you around is worthwhile. And if I refuse? If I tell you to go to hell and demand you let me go? He smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Then I'll remind you that you're not in a position to demand anything. You're the wrong girl, Olivia Chen. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong face. But you're here now. And you're mine to do with as I please. The question is whether I please to keep you alive. Your attitude is going to determine the answer. I wanted to spit in his face. Wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him and his threats. But survival instinct won over pride. This man was dangerous, clearly had no problem with violence, and I was completely at his mercy. What kind of work? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. That depends. What skills do you have, besides being an identical twin to a woman stupid enough to blackmail me? I'm a social worker. I work with underprivileged kids, help families navigate city services, advocate for people who don't have advocates. None of which is probably useful to a crime boss. You'd be surprised. Social work requires understanding people, reading situations, gaining trust. Those are valuable skills in any business. He studied me thoughtfully. Actually, you might be more useful than I initially thought. I have operations that could benefit from someone with your background. Legitimate operations, even. I'm not helping you with anything illegal. I didn't ask if you would. I told you that you will, or I'll find another use for you. One you'll like significantly less. He returned to his seat. Here's your situation, Olivia. You're not going home. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not until I decide you can. Your sister made choices that put you in danger, and now you're paying the price for her heroism. The question is whether you want to pay that price comfortably or painfully. I'm offering comfortable. Don't be stupid enough to choose painful. This is insane. You can't just kidnap someone and force them to work for you. That's slavery. Human trafficking. The exact thing Sophie's evidence probably proves you're involved in. I prefer to think of it as involuntary employment. But call it what you want. It's your reality now. He gestured to one of his men. Marco, take her to the safe house. Get her settled, make sure she has what she needs. And Olivia? His eyes locked on mine. Don't try to escape. Don't try to contact your sister or the police. Just do what you're told and accept that this is your life now. It'll be easier for everyone. This safe house was actually a luxury apartment in a high-rise building in Manhattan. Expensive furniture, panoramic views. The kind of place I could never afford on a social worker's salary. It would have been impressive if it wasn't essentially a very nice prison. Marco, the man who'd driven me here, was surprisingly polite despite being my captor. He showed me around the apartment, explained that the fridge was stocked, that I should make myself comfortable. The door locks from the outside, he explained. Don't try to leave without permission. There are security cameras, and someone's always watching. If you need anything, use the intercom. Someone will respond. What if I need to not be kidnapped? Can I request that? I'd recommend adjusting your attitude before the boss decides you're too much trouble. But he said it almost kindly, like he was giving genuine advice. He doesn't make empty threats. If he says he'll make your life difficult, he means it. After Marco left, I explored my gilded cage. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a full kitchen. A living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything was clean, modern, clearly maintained. This wasn't a temporary holding space. This was where Dante kept people long-term. I tried the door. Locked, as promised. Tried the windows. They didn't open, probably for exactly this reason. My phone was gone. They'd taken it in the van. The apartment had a landline, but when I picked it up, there was no dial tone. Just dead silence. I was truly trapped. That first night, I barely slept. Every noise made me jump, convinced someone was coming to hurt me. But no one came. The apartment remained silent except for the ambient sounds of the city below. The next morning, food appeared. I heard a key in the lock, and by the time I got to the door, it was locked again. But there was a tray on the entry table, breakfast, coffee, orange juice. All fresh, still hot. Someone had brought it while I was in the bathroom. I stared at the food, trying to decide if eating it meant accepting my situation. But I was hungry, and starving myself seemed stupid, so I ate. Around noon, the intercom crackled, Ms. Chen, Mr. Caruso will see you in an hour. Please be ready. Someone will collect you. I considered refusing. Considered barricading myself in the bathroom and forcing them to drag me out. But that seemed pointless, and would only make things worse. So when Marco appeared at the apartment an hour later, I went with him quietly. Dante was in the same office where I'd been brought yesterday. He looked up from his computer when I entered, gestured to the same chair. You look tired. Did you sleep? Not really. Kidnapping victims tend to have insomnia. Funny how that works. Sarcasm again. You use it like armor. He closed his laptop. I've been thinking about what to do with you. Your sister still hasn't responded to my attempts to contact her, which suggests she's gone into hiding. That makes you effectively worthless as leverage. Good. Let me go then. I said worthless as leverage. Not worthless entirely. He stood, moved to the windows. I run several businesses, Olivia. Some legal, some less so. One of my legitimate operations is a network of community centers in underserved neighborhoods. We provide after-school programs, job training, family services. It's good for community relations and serves as excellent cover for less savory activities. You're using charity work as a front for crime. How noble. I prefer to think of it as multitasking. But here's the interesting part. The community centers actually do help people. Genuinely. I employ social workers, teachers, counselors, real professionals doing real work. And I need another social worker. Someone who knows the city systems, understands the communities we serve, can manage cases effectively. You want me to work at your fake charity. I want you to work at my real charity that also happens to serve operational purposes. The work you'd be doing is legitimate. Helping families, advocating for kids, exactly what you were doing before. The only difference is your employer is morally questionable. The difference is I'd be doing it under duress. That's not the same as choosing to help people. Intent matters less than results. Whether you're helping families because you want to or because I'm forcing you to, the families are still being helped. That's what matters. To you, maybe. To me, intent is everything. Doing good work for bad reasons corrupts the work itself. That's remarkably naive for someone in your position. But I don't care about your philosophical objections. You'll work at the community center in Brooklyn starting Monday. Marco will drive you there each morning, pick you up each evening. You'll do the job, do it well, and maybe I'll eventually decide you've earned some freedom. And if I refuse, if I sabotage the work or tell people I'm being held against my will, then you'll discover that I have very creative ways of making people cooperate. I'd rather not use them. They're messy and I dislike unnecessary violence. But I will if necessary. Don't be necessary, Olivia. I wanted to keep fighting. Wanted to tell him to go to hell. But looking at his cold, certain expression, I knew he meant every word. He would hurt me if I didn't cooperate. And maybe worse than hurt me. Fine. I'll work at your community center. But this doesn't make us partners or allies. I'm doing it under duress, which makes you a kidnapper and me a victim. Don't forget that. I won't. As long as you don't forget that fighting me is pointless and will only make your situation worse. He returned to his desk, pulled out a file. This is your new employment documentation. Fake identity, fake background, real job responsibilities. You're now Maya Torres, social worker, recently relocated from Chicago. Study the file, memorize the details. If anyone asks questions, this is your story. You want me to lie about who I am. I want you to protect yourself and my operation by maintaining a cover identity. If your real identity becomes known, it creates complications. Complications I'll hold you responsible for. The file was thorough. Fake birth certificate, fake college transcripts, fake work history. Someone had clearly done this before, created identities for people who needed to disappear. What happened to the real Maya Torres? I asked, reading through the documents. There never was a real Maya Torres. It's a constructed identity. Though if it makes you feel better, tell yourself you're honoring her fictional memory by doing good work under her name. It doesn't make me feel better. Nothing about this makes me feel better. You'll adjust. Most people do. He checked his watch. Marco will take you back to the apartment. Spend the weekend preparing. Read the file, familiarize yourself with your cover story. Monday morning, you start your new life. This isn't a new life. This is my life being stolen and replaced with a lie. Semantics. From where I'm sitting, you're alive, employed, and living in luxury accommodations. Many people in my organization would consider that a good deal. Many people in your organization aren't there against their will. You'd be surprised. Circumstance forces people into all kinds of situations they didn't choose. You're not special, Olivia. You're just the latest person to discover that life doesn't always give you options. Back at the apartment, I spent the weekend alternating between rage and despair. I memorized the Maya Torres file because I didn't have a choice. I learned my fake birthday, my fake educational history, my fake previous jobs. I became someone else because the alternative was finding out what Dante meant by creative ways of making people cooperate. On Sunday evening, my sister finally called. The apartment's landline rang. The deadline suddenly alive, and when I answered, Sophie's voice came through, strained and desperate. Liv? Oh God, are you okay? Have they hurt you? I'm fine. Trapped but fine. Sophie, what the hell did you do? Why didn't you just give them the information back? Because it's evidence of horrible crimes, Liv. Human trafficking, drug smuggling, money laundering. Dante Caruso's organization is responsible for so much suffering. I can't just let that go to save myself. You're not saving yourself. You're not even in danger. I am. They grabbed me instead of you, and now I'm the one paying for your heroic principles? I know. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to figure out how to get you out, but what? But you won't trade the information because your moral high ground is more important than my life. That's not fair. Liv. If I give up this evidence, how many more people suffer? How many more victims? I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing would be saving your sister. The right thing would be not stealing from criminals in the first place. Sophie, I'm scared. I'm trapped in some apartment, forced to work for this man, and I don't know if I'll ever get free. And you're talking about principles and evidence like those matter more than me. She was crying now. They do matter. But so do you. Liv, I'm working on a plan. Just cooperate with them for now. Don't make waves. I'm gonna fix this. How? How are you going to fix this when you won't even trade to get me back? I'm talking to the FBI. Giving them the evidence. Working on a way to take Caruso down while getting you out safely. It's going to take time, but time I might not have. Sophie, these people are dangerous. You're playing games with my life. I'm trying to save it. And save all the other lives at stake. Please, Liv. Trust me, I'll fix this. The line went dead. I stood holding the phone, shaking with anger and fear and the horrible realization that my sister had chosen her principles over my safety. She was probably right. Morally, ethically, her choice made sense. But I was the one suffering for it, and I couldn't forgive her for that. Monday morning came too soon. Marco picked me up at 7 a.m., drove me to a community center in East Brooklyn. The building was nice, recently renovated, brightly painted, clearly well funded. Inside, I met the director. A woman named Patricia who seemed genuinely committed to the community. Maya! Welcome. We're so glad to have you. We desperately need another case manager. Our caseload has been overwhelming. She showed me to a small office. You'll primarily work with families dealing with housing issues, food insecurity, navigating city services. We also coordinate with the after-school program when kids need additional support. Sound manageable? It sounds like my old job, just with a different name. Perfect. Let me introduce you to the team. The other staff members seem nice, dedicated, passionate about the work, oblivious to the fact that their funding came from criminal enterprises. Or maybe they knew and didn't care. When you're helping struggling families, you don't always examine where the money comes from too closely. My first client was a single mother with 3 kids facing eviction. Her rent had increased beyond what she could afford on her minimum wage job, and she'd fallen 2 months behind. The landlord was filing for eviction, and she was terrified of ending up in a shelter. I don't know what to do, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm doing everything right. But it's not enough. It's never enough. I spent 2 hours with her, pulling up every resource I could find. Emergency rental assistance, legal aid for the eviction proceedings, job training programs that might help her qualify for better, paying work. It was exactly what I used to do. And despite my anger at being forced into this situation, I felt good helping her. Because she needed help, and I could provide it. At the end of the day, Patricia found me in my office. Maya, I heard about the work you did with Mrs. Rodriguez. She called me crying but happy tears. Said you gave her hope. That's exactly what we need here. Thank you. I was just doing the job. You were doing it well. We're lucky to have you. Except they didn't have me. They had Maya Torres, a fake person doing real work for criminal reasons. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. That evening, Marco drove me back to the apartment. Dante was waiting in the living room, which was alarming. I hadn't given him permission to be there. But then again, he owned the place. Permission wasn't relevant. How was your first day? He asked, as if this were a normal employment situation. I helped a woman avoid eviction. It felt good. I hate that it felt good. Why? You did meaningful work. The fact that you're being forced to do it doesn't make the work less meaningful. It makes me complicit in your operations. Every day I work there, I'm helping you maintain cover for whatever illegal activities you're running. That's not heroic. That's collaboration. Call it what you want. But Olivia, or should I call you Maya now? You're going to keep doing it. Because despite your moral objections, you're good at it. You help people. That's worth something, even in these circumstances. 3 months into my captivity, I refused to call it anything else, despite Dante's insistence that I was employed. I'd fallen into a routine. Wake up, get driven to the community center, help families navigate impossible systems, get driven back to the apartment. Repeat. The work was fulfilling despite everything. I'd helped dozens of families secure housing, access food programs, navigate immigration issues, connect kids with educational resources. Patricia kept praising my work, telling me I was the best case manager they'd had in years. It should have felt good. Instead, it felt like betrayal. Of myself, of my principles, of everything I believed about consent and freedom. You look tired, Marco observed one morning during the drive. Over 3 months, he'd become something like a friend, or at least, the closest thing I had to one in this situation. Trouble sleeping. I'm a prisoner doing forced labor. Sleep doesn't come easily. You're helping people. That's something to be proud of. I'd be prouder if I were doing it by choice. As it is, every family I help is just me collaborating with criminals. How is that something to celebrate? Because the families don't care why you're helping them. They just care that someone finally is. Mrs. Rodriguez. The woman you helped avoid eviction on your first day. She brought her kids to the center last week just to thank you. Said you saved their lives. Does your moral purity matter more than their gratitude? That's not fair. It's completely fair. You're so focused on being a victim that you're ignoring the actual good you're doing. Yeah, your situation sucks. But you're making other people's situations better. That counts for something. I wanted to argue, but he was right. My righteous anger about being forced to work was valid, but it didn't negate the real help I was providing. Complicated morality was exhausting. That evening, Dante showed up at the apartment again. He'd started doing that, appearing unannounced, checking in, asking about my work. It felt like supervision, which it probably was, but it also felt like something else. Like he was genuinely interested in what I was doing. Patricia says you've exceeded expectations. He said, settling onto the couch like he lived there. Nendi, 8% success rate on your cases. That's remarkable. I'm good at my job. That hasn't changed just because you kidnapped me. I prefer recruited. But semantics aside, your work is valuable. More valuable than I anticipated. I'm expanding your role. You can't expand my role. I'm already working full time against my will. There's no expansion possible. I'm opening a second community center in the Bronx. I want you to train the staff there, set up their case management systems, ensure they're operating at the same level of effectiveness as Brooklyn. It's a promotion. It's not a promotion when I didn't ask for it and can't refuse it. It's just more forced labor with a fancier title. You're impossible to please. I'm offering you more responsibility, more impact, better resources. Most people would be grateful. Most people aren't being held captive by a crime boss. Yet you benefit from it. You're living in luxury, doing meaningful work, making a difference in people's lives. Your captivity is remarkably comfortable, Olivia. Stop calling it comfortable. A gilded cage is still a cage. I don't have freedom. I don't have autonomy. I don't have choices. That's not comfort, that's control. He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. You're right, it is control. And I apologize for that, genuinely. You were collateral damage in a situation with your sister. You didn't deserve this. The apology caught me off guard. Then let me go. If you're actually sorry, give me my freedom back. I can't. Your sister is still out there with my information. Still working with the FBI to build a case against me. If I release you, you become a witness. You know too much about my operations now. The community centers, the funding structures, even just seeing my face. I can't risk that. So I'm trapped forever. Until what? You die. Go to prison. What's my endgame here? I don't know yet. But Olivia, I'm trying to make your imprisonment as bearable as possible. The work you're doing is real. The impact is real. That has to count for something. It counts for you feeling less guilty about kidnapping me. It doesn't change my situation. He stood, moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I respect your anger. You're not like most people in my world. You haven't accepted this, haven't normalized it. You're still fighting, even if it's just with words. That's admirable. After he left, I sat on the couch trying to process the conversation. He'd apologized. Actually apologized. Most kidnappers probably didn't do that. And there'd been something in his expression. Guilt, maybe, or regret. Like he actually felt bad about what he'd done. Not bad enough to let me go, but bad enough to notice I was suffering. The next morning, Sophie called again. These calls had become weekly. Her updating me on her FBI cooperation, me venting my rage at her for putting me in this situation. They're building a case, she said excitedly. Solid evidence, multiple charges. They think they can take down Caruso's entire operation within 6 months. And then you'll be free, Liv. You'll be safe. 6 months. Sophie, I've already been here 3 months. You're asking me to endure another 6 of captivity because of your choices. I'm asking you to hold on while I fix this. Liv, I'm so sorry. If I could trade places with you, I would. But giving up the evidence accomplishes nothing except letting him continue hurting people. He's not hurting me. That's what's so twisted about this. I'm comfortable, doing meaningful work, treated well. My captivity is so pleasant it's hard to remember I'm a prisoner. That's Stockholm Syndrome. Don't let him manipulate you into thinking this situation is acceptable. I'm not. I know it's not acceptable. But Sophie, he apologized yesterday. Actually said he was sorry for putting me in this situation. What kind of kidnapper apologizes? The kind trying to manipulate you into complacency. Liv, don't fall for it. He's a criminal. Whatever kindness he shows is strategic, not genuine. Was it? I wasn't sure anymore. Dante's apology had seemed real. His interest in my work seemed real. The guilt in his expression when I called my situation what it was, captivity, that had seemed real too. Just, hurry with your FBI case, please. I want my life back. I'm trying. I promise. Just hold on a little longer. The expansion to the Bronx Community Center happened 2 weeks later. I spent 3 days training the new staff, setting up systems, ensuring they understood the resources available. It was exhausting but satisfying. Like building something meaningful from scratch. On the 3rd day, Dante showed up at the Bronx Center. I was in the middle of a training session, explaining intake procedures, when he walked in with his usual entourage. The staff immediately tensed. Clearly, they knew who he was and what he represented. Mr. Caruso, Patricia, who'd come to help with training, said nervously. We weren't expecting you. I wanted to see the new facility and observe Maya's training methods. Continue as you were. So I continued training, hyper-aware of his presence in the back of the room. He watched silently, taking notes on his phone, his expression unreadable. When the session ended and the trainees dispersed, he approached me. You're a natural teacher. The staff respects you, trusts you. That's valuable. It's just doing my job. A job you're forcing me to do. A job you're excelling at. There's a difference between doing work under duress and doing it with genuine commitment. You're showing the latter. Because the families deserve my best effort, even if you don't. Fair. But Olivia, I want to discuss your situation. Your sister's FBI case is progressing. Eventually, it'll come to a head, arrests, trials, all of it. When that happens, your position becomes untenable. You'll be a witness, potentially valuable to prosecutors. I need to decide what to do with you before that moment arrives. My heart started racing. What does that mean? Are you threatening me? No. I'm telling you we need to have a conversation about your future. About what happens when this situation resolves itself. Come to my office tomorrow evening. We'll talk options. He left before I could respond, leaving me terrified about what talk options meant. Was he planning to kill me before I could testify? Move me somewhere remote where I couldn't be found? What? That night, I barely slept. Marco noticed my anxiety during the drive the next morning. Boss told you about the meeting. He told me we need to discuss options. That sounds like mob code for we're going to kill you. If he wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. Boss doesn't do cryptic warnings, he's efficient. If he's asking for a meeting, he actually wants to discuss something. That doesn't make me feel better. Look, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but boss feels guilty about your situation. Really guilty. He's been trying to figure out how to resolve it without either killing you or risking his operation. The meeting tomorrow is probably about that, about finding a solution that doesn't end with you dead. Probably doesn't end with me dead. How reassuring. It's the best I can offer. But Olivia, go into that meeting with an open mind. Boss isn't the monster you think he is. He's complicated, yeah, but he's not cruel. He's been treating you well because he actually regrets how this played out. The next evening, Marco drove me to Dante's office. The same room where I'd been brought 3 months ago, where this nightmare had started. Dante was waiting, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Sit, please. He gestured to the chair. I want to discuss your long-term situation. My long-term captivity, you mean? Your long-term employment and living arrangements. Olivia, I've been thinking about this extensively. Your sister's case is going to reach a conclusion. Probably within 3 to 6 months. When that happens, I'll likely be facing charges, possibly arrest. My operations will be disrupted, at minimum, and you'll be free. So you're letting me go, when you get arrested? Not exactly. Because even if I'm arrested, my organization continues. My associates, my businesses, they don't disappear just because I'm in custody. And you'll still be a witness who knows too much. Someone in my organization might decide you're a liability worth eliminating. My blood ran cold. So even if you don't kill me, someone else will. Possibly, unless I give them reasons not to. Which is what I'm proposing. He leaned forward. I want to offer you actual employment. Real salary, real benefits, real choice. You continue doing exactly what you're doing. Running the community centers, training staff, helping families. But you do it voluntarily, as a legitimate employee of my organization. In exchange, you get protection. No one touches you because you're valuable. Not captive. You're asking me to willingly work for criminals. I'm asking you to keep doing the work you're already doing, but with freedom and protection instead of captivity and threats. The work itself doesn't change, just your relationship to it. My relationship is currently kidnapped prisoner. Any change from that is an improvement, but it doesn't make it right. No. It doesn't. But Olivia, I'm trying to give you options in a situation with limited good choices. You can refuse this offer. But if you do, I have to consider you a liability, and liabilities get handled. So it's accept employment or die. That's not really a choice. It's more choice than you had before. And the employment is genuine. You'd have actual autonomy. Ability to quit if you wanted. Normal worker protections. I'm not offering continued captivity with better marketing. I'm offering freedom within realistic constraints. I wanted to refuse on principle. Wanted to tell him that working for criminals voluntarily was even worse than being forced. But Marco's words echoed. If he wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. Dante was offering me a way out that didn't end with my death. That had to count for something. I need time to think about it. You have 48 hours. Then I need an answer. He stood. And Olivia, I hope you say yes. Not because I need you. I can find other social workers. But because you're good at this work, and the communities you serve would suffer without you. That matters more than our complicated situation. I spent the next 48 hours agonizing over the decision. On one hand, accepting Dante's offer meant willingly collaborating with criminals. Everything I'd spent 3 months resenting. On the other hand, refusing likely meant death. Not exactly a fair choice. You're overthinking this, Marco said during one of our drives. I'd started confiding in him. He was the closest thing I had to a friend in this bizarre situation. The work you'd be doing is the same work you're already doing. The only difference is you'd be choosing it. Choosing under threat of death isn't really choosing. It's more choice than you had before. And live, be honest, would you actually quit if you could? Walk away from the families you're helping. He had a point. Over 3 months, I'd become invested in my cases. Mrs. Rodriguez and her kids, the immigrant family I'd helped navigate legal services, the teenager I'd connected with a scholarship program. I cared about them. Walking away would mean abandoning people who needed me. This is exactly what he's counting on. I said. That I'm too invested to leave even if he gives me the option. He's manipulating my compassion. Or he's recognizing that you're genuinely good at this, and offering you a way to keep doing it without being a prisoner. Not everything is manipulation, Liv. On the evening of the deadline, I met with Dante in his office. He looked tense, like my answer actually mattered to him. I'll take the job, I said before he could speak. But I have conditions. I'm listening. First, I want actual freedom. Not supervised trips between apartment and work. I want to be able to go where I want, when I want. No tracking, no guards, no surveillance. I can agree to that, with one caveat: you don't contact law enforcement or your sister. Those restrictions remain for everyone's safety. Fine. Second condition. I want a real salary. Market rate for my experience level, not whatever token amount you were planning to pay me. And I want it in legal, taxable income. I'm not becoming complicit in money laundering. Agreed. You'll be paid through the legitimate business structure. Fully legal employment. Third condition. If I decide this isn't working, I can quit. Real quit, not quit and then get killed quit. You let me leave, give me protection if needed, and we go our separate ways. He was quiet for a long moment. That's the condition I can't fully agree to. If you quit, you're still a liability. Someone who knows about my operations, who could testify against me. I can promise I won't hurt you. But I can't control what others in my organization might do. The best protection I can offer is continued employment. So I'm still trapped. Just with nicer packaging. You're protected as long as you're valuable. That's the reality of this world. I wish I could offer you complete freedom, but I can't. Not without risking both of us. I hated that his answer made sense. Hated that I understood the logic. Hated that I was about to voluntarily enter into employment with a criminal organization because the alternatives were worse. Fine. I accept. But Dante, this doesn't make us friends. It doesn't absolve you of kidnapping me. I'm doing this because I have no better options, not because I forgive you. I understand. And for what it's worth, I am sorry. Truly. You were collateral damage in a situation that wasn't your fault, and I regret that. Sorry doesn't give me back 3 months of freedom. But I'll take the job. Because the work matters. Even if the employer is morally bankrupt. Over the next few weeks, my situation transformed. The locks came off the apartment. It became my actual home rather than my prison. I got my phone back, reconnected with friends, started rebuilding the parts of my life that had disappeared. Marco stopped supervising my movements. I could go anywhere. Do anything, as long as I didn't contact law enforcement or Sophie. The freedom was intoxicating. I'd forgotten how good it felt to walk down a street without someone watching. To make choices about my own time, to just exist without constant surveillance. The work itself became more fulfilling now that it was voluntary. I threw myself into expanding the programs, training new staff, connecting with the communities we served. Patricia promoted me to program director. A real promotion this time. With actual authority and decision-making power. You've transformed these centers. She told me during a review meeting. The success rates have doubled since you started. You're making a real difference. It's a good team. Everyone's committed. But you're the one who brought it together. Maya, I know you came from Chicago under difficult circumstances. But whatever brought you here, I'm glad it did. These communities need people like you. I smiled, accepting the praise while hating the lie underneath it. Maya Torres didn't exist. She was a fiction created by criminals. But the work she did, that was real. The families she helped were real. That had to count for something. 4 months after accepting the job, Sophie finally made contact. I was at my apartment when my phone rang. Her number, the first time we'd spoken since that call 3 months ago. Liv. Oh God, I've been so worried. Are you okay? I tried calling your old number but it was disconnected, and I didn't know how to reach you. I'm fine. The number changed when my situation changed. Sophie, I need you to know, I'm working for them now. Voluntarily, I accepted a job with Caruso's organization. Silence. Then, what? Liv, no, you can't. That's collaboration. That's survival. They gave me a choice between accepting employment or being killed as a liability. I chose living. You don't get to judge that. But working for them voluntarily. Live. You're helping them maintain cover for their illegal operations. You're complicit now. I'm helping families access resources and services. That's what I'm doing. The fact that it also benefits criminals doesn't change the good I'm accomplishing. The good doesn't erase the bad. You're working for human traffickers. Live. How can you live with that? How can you live with letting me be kidnapped? Because your principles were more important than my safety. We've both made compromises, Sophie. Mine just involved staying alive. The FBI is close to making arrests. When they do, you'll be called as a witness. Will you testify? Or has Caruso bought your loyalty with a job and an apartment? I'll testify if I have to. But Sophie, understand something. I'm not doing this because I agree with him. I'm doing it because I have no better options. You put me in this situation. You chose evidence over family. This is the consequence of your choice. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You decided I was acceptable collateral damage in your crusade against organized crime. Now I'm dealing with the fallout. Don't expect me to apologize for surviving it the best way I could. I hung up before she could respond, shaking with anger. Sophie wanted me to be her moral compass, to validate her choices by suffering nobly for her principles. But I wasn't going to do that. I'd found a way to survive that also did real good in the world. That had to be enough. That evening, Dante showed up at my apartment. A rare occurrence now that I had actual freedom. He looked troubled. Your sister called you. How do you know that? Because I monitor communications for security reasons. Don't worry. I'm not listening to your conversations, just tracking who contacts you and when. Your sister is a risk. She's not going to expose me. Whatever else she is, Sophie's not vindictive. I'm less worried about her exposing you than about her trying to use you as leverage again. The FBI case is progressing. Arrests are likely within weeks. When that happens, both you and your sister become high-value witnesses. People in my organization might decide eliminating you is worth the risk. Fear spiked through me. I thought accepting the job meant protection. It does. From me, from people who answer to me. But not everyone in my organization follows my orders perfectly. And if I'm arrested, my influence diminishes. I'm telling you this so you can be careful. Aware of the risks. What am I supposed to do? Live in fear that someone might decide I'm a liability worth killing. You're supposed to let me protect you. Which brings me to why I'm here. He moved closer, his expression intense. When the arrests happen, you'll be vulnerable. I want you to stay close to me, or rather, to my protection detail. Let Marco and my people keep you safe until the situation stabilizes. Stay close to you. The man who kidnapped me. The man who's offering you the best chance of survival. Olivia, I know you don't trust me. I know you have every reason to hate me. But I'm good at keeping people alive. Let me do that for you. Why? Why do you care if I survive or not? I'm just a social worker you grabbed by mistake. Because you're not just anything. You're... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. You've become important. To the centers, to the communities, to the work we're doing. And to me, if I'm being honest. I don't want you hurt because of choices I made. Important to you. That's terrifying, considering you're a criminal who kidnaps people. It should be. But it's also your best protection. People don't harm what I value. And I value you, your work, your integrity, your refusal to accept this situation passively. That's worth protecting. This is insane. I've developed some kind of Stockholm syndrome where my kidnapper caring about me is supposed to be comforting. Call it what you want. But when the FBI makes their move, promise me you'll let me protect you. Let Marco stay close, follow security protocols. Promise me, Olivia. There was something desperate in his voice, something that went beyond strategic concern for an asset. He actually cared. Somehow, impossibly, this criminal who'd stolen my freedom had developed genuine feelings for me, I promise. But Dante, this doesn't change what you did. Caring about me now doesn't erase kidnapping me. I know. But maybe it means something that I'm trying to make amends the only way I know how. The FBI raids happened 2 weeks later. I was at the Brooklyn Community Center when Marco burst in, urgent and tense. We need to leave. Now, FBI's hitting multiple locations. Boss wants you secured immediately. Secured where? Safe house. Different from before, this one's actually secure, not just comfortable. Come on, we don't have time to argue. I grabbed my things and followed him to the car. As we drove, I could see the chaos. FBI vehicles everywhere, agents executing search warrants, people being led out of buildings in handcuffs. Is Dante being arrested? Probably. Boss knew it was coming. He's prepared. But you're not. You're a loose end someone might try to tie up permanently. That's why we're moving you. The safe house was actually a compound in upstate New York. Gated, guarded, the kind of place designed to keep both people in and threats out. Inside, I found several other people. Associates of Dante's, I assumed. All being protected from the FBI operation. For 3 days we waited. No news, no contact, just armed guards and locked doors. On day 4, Marco finally brought information. Boss was arrested. Multiple charges, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. He's being held without bail. The trial will probably take months. What happens to me? To us? Boss left instructions. You're under protection until the trial concludes and we know who's cooperating with prosecutors. After that, we'll see. But for now, you stay here where it's safe. I'm a prisoner again. You're protected. There's a difference. 6 weeks into lockdown at the compound, I was going crazy. The place was comfortable. Nice rooms, good food, even a library and gym. But it was still captivity, still guards at every door, still no freedom to come and go. How much longer? I asked Marco during one of his daily check-ins. The trial hasn't even started yet. You can't keep me here indefinitely. Boss's orders were to keep you safe until the situation stabilizes. That hasn't happened yet. 3 people connected to the organization have been killed. Cooperating witnesses, presumably. You're too valuable to risk. Valuable to whom? Dante's in prison. Why does his protection still matter? Because his organization is still operational. His second in command is running things, following boss's instructions. And one of those instructions is keeping you alive and secure. 2 days later, everything changed. Marco appeared at my room looking shaken. Boss wants to see you. At the prison. He's arranged a meeting. Why? What does he want? He didn't say. Just that it was important and you needed to come today. I'll drive you. The prison was grim. Concrete and steel. Nothing like Dante's comfortable world. They processed me through security, took everything except my ID, and led me to a visiting room divided by thick glass. Dante was already sitting on the other side, wearing an orange jumpsuit that looked wrong on him. Too institutional, too diminished. He looked thinner than I remembered. Tired. But when he saw me, his expression brightened with genuine relief. Olivia, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? Probably not. But thank you anyway. He picked up the phone on his side of the glass, and I did the same. How are you? Marco says you're going crazy at the compound. I've gone from one prison to another. How do you think I am? Fair. I'm sorry. I know you're tired of being locked up, but Olivia, the situation is worse than you know. The FBI has 3 cooperating witnesses. One of them is naming you as someone with knowledge of operations. They're going to subpoena you to testify. My stomach dropped. Testify about what? I don't know anything about your illegal operations. I just ran community centers. You know about the funding structure. About how money flowed through the programs. About associates you met, conversations you overheard. They'll try to use you to establish patterns and connections. And once you're identified as a witness, people in my organization who are still free might decide you're too dangerous to leave alive. So I'm dead either way. If I testify, your people kill me. If I don't testify, I go to prison for contempt. Perfect, not dead, protected. But Olivia, I need to know, if you're forced to testify, what will you say? Will you cooperate with prosecutors or refuse to answer questions? What do you want me to say? That I'll lie for you, perjure myself to protect a criminal organization. I want you to tell me the truth. So I know what's coming, what to prepare for. If you're going to cooperate, I need to adjust strategies. If you're going to refuse, I need to prepare for contempt charges against you. Just be honest with me. I looked at him through the glass. This man who'd kidnapped me, forced me to work for him, then somehow became someone I didn't entirely hate. Someone who'd shown me genuine regret, who'd tried to protect me, who'd valued the work I did. I don't know what I'll say. If they ask me direct questions about illegal activities, I'll probably answer honestly. I'm not going to perjure myself. But if they ask me to speculate or interpret things I didn't directly witness, I'll refuse to answer. I'm not going to help them convict you based on guesses and assumptions. That's more than fair. Thank you for being honest. He paused, seeming to struggle with something. Olivia, I need to tell you something. These past months, having you in my life, even under horrible circumstances, they've meant something. You challenged me, made me question things I never questioned before, made me want to be better than I was. That's not nothing. Dante, you kidnapped me, held me captive, forced me to work for you. Whatever feelings you've developed don't change that. I know. But they're still real, and when this trial is over, whether I'm convicted or somehow acquitted, I want you to know you'll be taken care of. Protected, compensated, given whatever you need to rebuild your life. That's not contingent on your testimony or your feelings about me. It's just what you deserve. Why? Why would you do that? Because I wronged you, and because... He pressed his hand against the glass. Because in another life, under different circumstances, I think we could have been something. Friends, at minimum. Maybe more. But I destroyed that possibility when I had you grabbed. This is me trying to make amends for that. I pressed my hand against the glass opposite his, separated by barrier and circumstances, and choices neither of us could undo. In another life, maybe. But in this one, you're a criminal who kidnapped me. That's what defines us, Dante. Not whatever feelings developed afterward. I know. But I needed to say it anyway. Needed you to know that you matter, to me. Beyond your usefulness, beyond protection strategies, you're important. Remember that, whatever happens next. The visit ended, and Marco drove me back to the compound in silence. I spent the next few days processing the conversation, trying to understand my own feelings. I should hate Dante. Should want him convicted and imprisoned forever. But instead, I felt complicated. Sad for what we might have been in different circumstances. Angry about what we actually were. The subpoena arrived a week later. I was ordered to appear before a grand jury to answer questions about Dante's operations. Marco immediately contacted the lawyer Dante had arranged for me, a sharp woman named Victoria who specialized in witness testimony. You're in a difficult position, Victoria explained during our prep meeting. You know enough to be valuable to prosecutors, but not enough to provide testimony that would definitively prove criminal enterprise. My advice is to answer questions honestly but narrowly. Don't volunteer information, don't speculate, don't interpret. Just answer exactly what's asked, nothing more. And if I do that, will it hurt Dante's case? Possibly. But not significantly. They have bigger witnesses, stronger evidence. Your testimony is corroborative, not primary. You're not the one who'll convict him. So I can be honest without destroying him. Essentially. Though understand. Being honest means admitting you worked for his organization. Knew it was funded through questionable means. That makes you look complicit. Are you prepared for that? I've been complicit for months. At least now I can be honest about it. The grand jury testimony happened 2 days later. I answered questions about the community centers, about the funding structure, about associates I'd met. I admitted I'd suspected criminal activity, but hadn't witnessed it directly. I refused to speculate about things I didn't know for certain. Afterwards, the prosecutor cornered me in the hallway. You were surprisingly unhelpful, Miss Chen, almost like you were protecting someone. I was protecting the truth. I told you what I knew firsthand. I'm not going to guess or assume just to help your case. You do realize Caruso kidnapped you. Held you against your will. You don't owe him anything. I know what he did, but I also know that lying under oath makes me a criminal too. I answered your questions honestly. That's all I'm required to do. Back at the compound, I found Marco waiting with news. Boss's trial date is set. 3 months from now. He wants you there, not to testify, just to be present. Says it would mean a lot to him. Why? So I can watch him get convicted. So he knows someone's there who sees him as more than just a criminal defendant. Someone who knows the complicated truth about who he is. 3 months felt like forever. But I used the time productively. Working remotely to keep the community centers running. Training staff via video calls, ensuring the programs continued even with their funding source in legal jeopardy. Patricia called frequently, keeping me updated on the center's status. We're managing, but it's hard without you here. When can you come back? After the trial. Once the situation stabilizes and I'm not a target anymore. Maya, can I ask you something? The man on trial, Mr. Caruso, you know him, don't you? More than just as an employer. It's complicated. He's done terrible things. But he's also done good things. Understanding both truths simultaneously is exhausting. That's called being human. Nobody's purely good or purely evil. We're all complicated. The trial began on a cold October morning. I sat in the gallery, watching Dante enter in a suit instead of prison jumpsuit. His legal team had fought for that dignity. He looked composed, professional, nothing like the diminished man I'd seen in prison. When his eyes found mine in the courtroom, something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. Gratitude. Like my presence actually mattered to him. The prosecution presented their case over 2 weeks. Financial records, witness testimony, intercepted communications. They painted Dante as a ruthless criminal who'd built an empire on suffering. They weren't wrong. But they also weren't complete. The defense countered with character witnesses, with evidence of legitimate business operations, with arguments about reasonable doubt. They painted Dante as a businessman operating in gray areas, not a crime boss. They were being generous with the truth. I watched it all, this battle over who Dante really was, and realized both sides were partially right. He was a criminal who'd done terrible things. He was also a man who'd built community centers that genuinely helped people. Both truths existed simultaneously. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 4 days. When they returned, the verdict was mixed. Guilty on some charges, acquitted on others. Enough for conviction and prison time. But not the life sentence prosecutors had wanted. Dante was sentenced to 12 years, with possibility of parole after 8. As they led him away, he looked back at me one final time. Mouthed 2 words. Thank you. I nodded, accepting the gratitude even if I wasn't sure I deserved it. Outside the courthouse, Sophie was waiting. We hadn't spoken since that angry phone call months ago, hadn't resolved the hurt between us. Liv, I saw you inside. You came to his trial. I did. He asked me to be there. The man who kidnapped you asked, and you showed up. Liv, that's Stockholm Syndrome. That's me making complicated choices in a complicated situation. Sophie, I know you want me to hate him. Want me to be a perfect victim who suffered nobly and emerged with my principles intact. But life isn't that simple. He kidnapped me, yes. But he also showed me genuine regret, protected me, valued the work I did. I can acknowledge all of that without excusing what he did to me. So you forgive him? I don't know if I forgive him. But I understand him. And I understand that people are more than their worst actions. That's not Stockholm Syndrome. That's just truth. Sophie looked like she wanted to argue but didn't. The FBI is done with both of us now. The case is closed. You're free to go back to your normal life. I don't know what my normal life is anymore. The work I was doing, it was good work, important work. I think I'll keep doing it, even if the funding source is tainted. You're going to keep working for his organization. I'm going to keep helping families who need help. The organization is just the structure. The families, they're what matters. I walked away from Sophie, from the courthouse, from the whole complicated mess. Marco was waiting with the car. Boss wanted me to give you this. He handed me an envelope. Instructions for the future. Your future, specifically. Inside was a letter from Dante, handwritten in surprisingly elegant script. Olivia. By the time you read this, I'll be in prison for the foreseeable future. I can't undo what I did to you. The kidnapping, the captivity, the impossible choices I forced on you. But I can try to make your future better than your past. The community centers are yours. Full control, full authority. The funding is being restructured through legitimate channels. Still sufficient, no longer criminal. You can run them however you see fit. Help as many families as you want. Build the kind of programs you believe in. I've also arranged for financial compensation beyond your salary. An account in your name with enough money to give you security and choices. You can refuse it if it feels like blood money. But I hope you'll accept it as what it is. An attempt to give you back some of what I took. Thank you for seeing me as more than just a criminal. Thank you for the work you did, the impact you made. Thank you for being at the trial. It meant more than you know. Be safe. Be happy. Build something beautiful with the freedom you've reclaimed. 5 years after Dante's conviction. The community centers had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What started as 2 locations in Brooklyn and the Bronx had expanded to 6 facilities across New York, serving thousands of families. I'd built something real. Something meaningful. Something that helped people regardless of where the initial funding had come from. M's. Torres! A teenager I'd helped get into college stopped me outside the Brooklyn Center. I wanted to tell you. I got accepted to Columbia! Full scholarship! None of this would have happened without your help. You did this, Maria. You worked hard, stayed focused. I just helped you navigate the process. You believed in me when no one else did. That's what made the difference. After she left, Patricia found me in my office. She'd become more than my colleague over the years. She was my friend, my confidant, one of the few people who knew the truth about Maya Torres. You're changing lives, she said. Every day, every family. That has to feel good. It does. But sometimes I wonder, am I doing good work despite how it started, or because of it? Does it matter that this whole life was built on kidnapping and coercion? It matters what you do with it now. You took something terrible and transformed it into something beautiful. That's redemption live. For you, for the organization, maybe even for Dante. Dante. I hadn't seen him since the sentencing 5 years ago. But we'd corresponded. Letters exchanged through Marco. Carefully worded to avoid anything that might implicate either of us in remaining criminal activity. He wrote about prison life, about programs he was participating in, about his regret for choices that had led him there. I wrote about the centers, about families we'd helped, about the impact his funding had enabled before everything fell apart. I never wrote about my feelings. They were too complicated, too contradictory to put into words. 8 years into his sentence, Dante became eligible for parole. Marco called me with the news, asking if I'd be willing to speak at his hearing. Why would they want to hear from me? I'm his kidnapping victim. Exactly. You're the person he wronged most directly. If you can speak to his character, to his genuine regret and attempts to make amends, that carries weight. I don't know if I can do that. Stand up and vouch for the man who held me captive. I'm not asking you to vouch for his past actions. I'm asking you to speak truth about who he became after. About the remorse, the restitution, the attempts to be better. That's worth something. I spent 2 weeks deciding before finally agreeing. The parole hearing was in a small room at the prison. Dante sitting at a table in prison blues, looking older than his years. 43 now, with gray at his temples that hadn't been there before. When they called me to speak, I stood and faced the parole board. 8 years ago, Dante Caruso's men kidnapped me by mistake. They were looking for my twin sister, grabbed me instead, and he decided to keep me rather than admit the error. For 3 months, I was held against my will, forced to work for his organization. It was traumatic, violating, and wrong. Dante's expression was pained but accepting. He'd known this was part of my testimony. But after those first 3 months, he gave me a choice. Continue working voluntarily or face consequences. I chose to work because the alternative was death. And over the following months, something strange happened. The work I was doing, helping families, running community programs, became genuinely meaningful. I stopped being just a captive and became someone who cared about the impact I was making. When Dante was arrested, he could have abandoned me. Let me fend for myself, face potential retaliation from his organization alone. Instead, he protected me. Arranged security, legal support, financial stability. And when he was sentenced, he transferred full control of the community centers to me. Gave me the resources to continue the work without criminal funding. I don't forgive him for kidnapping me. That's not something I can forgive. But I acknowledge that he showed genuine remorse, made real attempts at restitution, and tried to be better than his worst actions. The community centers serve over 5,000 families now. That's his legacy, built on my work but funded by his resources. That has to count for something. The parole board asked me questions about whether I feared Dante, whether I believed he'd be dangerous if released, whether his remorse seemed genuine. I answered honestly. He'd terrified me initially. But over time, he'd shown himself to be more than just a criminal, someone capable of regret, of growth, of recognizing his wrongs. 3 weeks later, Marco called with the news. He got parole. He'll be released in 60 days. My reaction was complicated. Relief that he wouldn't spend another 4 years in prison. Anxiety about what his release meant for me. Uncertainty about whether we'd have any relationship going forward. The day of his release, I stood outside the prison watching him walk out into freedom. He looked disoriented. 8 years inside would do that. But when he saw me waiting, his expression transformed. Olivia, you came. I wanted to see if you'd actually changed, or if prison just taught you to perform remorse convincingly. Fair question. I guess time will tell. He moved closer, cautious. Thank you for speaking at the hearing. What you said, it made a difference. I told the truth. That's all. The truth was generous, considering what I did to you. Not many people would have shown that grace. We stood there awkwardly. Two people connected by trauma and complicated history, unsure how to relate now that the power dynamic had shifted. What happens now? I ask. What are your plans? Rebuild my life. Legally, this time. I've spent 8 years thinking about what I want to be when I'm finally free. The answer isn't crime boss. He smiled slightly. I was thinking maybe consulting. Helping organizations transition from gray market to legitimate operations. Using my experience to keep others from making my mistakes. That's surprisingly thoughtful. I had a lot of time to think. And Olivia, I know we can't just pick up where we left off. Can't pretend 8 years of prison and trauma don't exist between us. But I'd like to try something new. Start fresh. If you're willing. Just coffee, conversation. Two people figuring out if there's anything worth building between them. I don't know if I can do that. See you as anything but the man who kidnapped me. Then let me earn something different. Let me show you I'm more than my worst choice. If after 6 months of coffee and conversation you still only see the kidnapper, I'll accept that. But give me the chance to be something else. I thought about the letters we'd exchanged. The community centers he'd funded, then transferred to me. The protection he'd arranged even from prison. The genuine remorse in his voice at the parole hearing. Maybe people could change. Maybe redemption was possible even for kidnappers. Coffee. Once a week. We talk about neutral things, the centers, your reentry, plans for the future. Nothing personal, nothing romantic. Just two people who share complicated history trying to find some kind of peace with it. I'll take it. Thank you, Olivia. Over the next 6 months, we met for coffee weekly. Talked about his adjustment to freedom, about the center's growth, about families we'd both known. Him from funding, me from direct service. Slowly, cautiously, we built something that resembled friendship. You're different. I observed during one of our meetings. Less dangerous, more thoughtful. Prison changed you. Prison humbled me. Made me face what I'd become, what I'd done. I had 8 years to think about every choice, every consequence. Can't hide from yourself in a cell. He paused. Did you ever forgive your sister? For choosing evidence over your safety. Eventually, I realized she was trying to do good in an impossible situation, same as I was. We made different choices, but both were trying to minimize harm. That understanding took years, but we got there. Think you'll ever reach that understanding with me? I don't know. What you did was more direct, more violent. But Danta, I understand you better now. Understand the impossible position you thought you were in, the limited options you saw. That doesn't excuse it, but it contextualizes it. Maybe that's enough. 2 years after his release, Dante had built a successful consulting business. He worked with organizations trying to go legitimate, helped them navigate legal complexities, provided strategic advice. It was profitable, legal, and genuinely helpful. He'd become the person he'd claimed he wanted to be. I'm proud of you. I told him over dinner. Our meetings had graduated from coffee to actual meals. You rebuilt your life into something good. That's not easy. I had good examples. You took trauma and transformed it into meaningful work. If you could do that, I figured I could at least try. He reached across the table, took my hand. Olivia, I know we started this as just coffee, just conversation. But somewhere along the way, I've developed feelings. Real feelings. And I need to know. Is there any possibility you feel the same? I don't know. I care about you. But I also remember being terrified, being trapped, being forced. Can I separate who you are now from who you were then? I don't know. But maybe we could try. See if what we have now can outweigh what happened then. I'm not asking for immediate commitment. Just permission to try. You're asking me to date my former kidnapper. That's insane. It is. But we're already insane, meeting weekly. Sharing our lives, building something that looks like friendship but feels like more. Why not acknowledge what it is? Because acknowledging it makes it real. Makes me someone who fell for her captor. That's not who I want to be. Then who do you want to be? Because the woman I see is someone who transformed trauma into purpose, who helped thousands of families, who showed grace to someone who didn't deserve it. That's who you are, Olivia. The circumstances that brought us together don't define you. Your choices do. He was right. I'd spent 10 years letting my kidnapping define me, even while building something beautiful from it. Maybe it was time to define myself differently, not as victim, but as survivor. Not as captive, but as someone who chose compassion even when it was hard. Okay. We can try. But Dantes slowly, carefully, with full honesty about how complicated this is. I need to be able to walk away if it becomes too much. Deal, slow, careful, honest. That's all I'm asking. 5 years after his release, we were in a relationship that looked almost normal. Dinners, movies, quiet evenings at my apartment. Now genuinely mine. Not provided by his organization. We attended events at the community centers together, him as reform donor, me as director. People who knew our history thought we were crazy. Maybe we were. Do you regret it? Danny asked one evening. We were at his apartment, modest, nothing like the luxury of his criminal days, cooking dinner together. Giving me a chance, letting this become something. Sometimes. When I remember being scared, being trapped. But then I look at what we've built, individually and together. And I think maybe redemption is possible. Maybe people can change. Maybe love can grow even in impossible circumstances. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not. But I'm giving it anyway. Not because you earned it. But because holding on to anger forever is exhausting. I'd rather build something new than keep carrying something old. That's remarkably wise for someone who's been through what you've been through. I learned it from the families I work with. They face impossible situations every day, poverty, trauma, systems that fail them. But they keep trying, keep hoping, keep building better futures despite terrible pasts. If they can do it, so can I. So can we. 10 years after the kidnapping, 15 years after we'd first met, Dante proposed. Not with grand gestures. We'd had enough drama. Just quiet, honest, in the apartment where we'd learned to be ourselves with each other. I know this is unconventional. I know our history is complicated. But Olivia, I love you. I've loved you since before I understood what that meant. Will you marry me? You're asking me to marry my kidnapper. Do you understand how insane that sounds? Completely. But I'm not that person anymore. Neither are you. We're two people who found each other in the worst circumstances and built something beautiful anyway. Isn't that worth celebrating? Yes, it is. And yes, I'll marry you. But Danta, we're never keeping secrets from each other. No hidden operations, no omissions, no protecting me from information. Full honesty, full partnership. That's non-negotiable. Agreed. You get all of me, past, present, future. The good and the terrible. That's the deal. The wedding was small. Family, close friends, people from the community centers. Patricia cried through the entire ceremony. Marco gave a speech about second chances and redemption that made everyone emotional. And when Dante and I exchanged vows, they were honest about our complicated beginning and hopeful about our chosen future. I promise to never take your freedom for granted. To honor the choice you made to love me despite everything. To be worthy of your grace. And to spend every day trying to be better than I was. My vows were equally honest. I promise to remember who we were while celebrating who we've become. To acknowledge the past without being trapped by it. To build a future based on choice, not coercion. And to keep believing that people can change, can grow, can love despite impossible odds. 20 years after the kidnapping, we'd built a life neither of us could have imagined. The community centers served over 15,000 families. Dante's consulting business had helped dozens of organizations transition to legitimate operations. We had a daughter, adopted, because some trauma doesn't erase, who knew our full story and loved us anyway. Do you regret anything? Our daughter asked one evening. She was 16, studying criminal justice, endlessly fascinated by her parents' unlikely love story. I regret the kidnapping, Dante said immediately. Wish I could undo that choice, spare your mother that trauma. But I don't regret where we ended up. This life, this family, it's worth every hard moment it took to get here. What about you, Mom? Do you regret staying? Giving him a chance? I regret the fear and captivity. But Emma, Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things. Your father and I. We shouldn't have worked. By every logical measure, we were impossible. But love isn't logical. Grace isn't logical. Redemption isn't logical. And somehow, impossibly, we built something real from something terrible. That's worth celebrating. Dante took my hand, squeezed gently. 20 years of choosing each other, of building something beautiful from broken pieces. Of proving that people can change, that love can grow in impossible circumstances, that redemption is possible even for kidnappers and their victims. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing who I could be instead of just who I was. For giving me the chance to become better. Thank you for becoming better. For doing the hard work of change. For proving that grace isn't wasted on people who genuinely try to earn it. Our daughter smiled. You two are disgustingly romantic for people who started with kidnapping. We're disgustingly romantic because we started with kidnapping. I corrected. We know how valuable this is. How easily it could have gone differently. That makes us appreciate what we have. 20 years. Two people who should never have worked. Who defied every logical expectation. But love rarely follows logic. Grace rarely makes sense. Redemption rarely comes easily. And sometimes, the worst beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. We proved that. Every day, for 20 years. And we'd keep proving it for however many years we had left. Because that's what love is. Choosing each other, repeatedly, despite all the reasons not to. We'd chosen each other from impossible circumstances. And we'd keep choosing each other forever. The end. But also the beginning. Always the beginning.